Shalom everybody, and welcome to a special program, Davat Amen Ministries. A special evening indeed. We call this evening, We Remember. Tonight, all of the house of Israel stand together and we say, we will never forget. We remember. Tonight, I would like to tell you the stories that I remember. The story that my mother remembered, the story that my father remembered, and the story of the house of Israel. It is the story of the Shoah, the Holocaust, in a slightly different way. Not just looking at the past, not just looking at the present, but also looking ahead in the future. Tomorrow, during the Yom HaShoah day, started at 8 a.m. Central Time, we will have a special broadcast available for all of you. It is a traditional morning shacharit prayer that will be followed by a specific prayers that are recited during Yom HaShoah. I sincerely hope that you will be able to join us. This will be followed by a prophetic statement from different geographies, from United States to Italy, to Holland, India, and South America, renouncing anti-Semitism and asking for repentance during this time for the sins of the Shoah and saying together, never again. I dedicate this service today, this special time, to all of those who lost loved one, to the victim of the Shoah, of anti-Semitism. As each one of us today stand for the 6 million victims, we say never again. Throughout this special evening, we will go through different segments. I hope that these segments will not just be a watching entertainment for you, but there will be times that you truly think about this and say, am I breaking the code of silence? Am I the person who truly proclaim never again during this time? I hope that the answer is yes. Tomorrow you will have a chance after Shacharit to hear from some Holocaust survivors, hear their stories. Hear also from Pastor Mark Belt, who will give a prophetic message against anti-Semitism in the churches today. We today say, never again. I honor those words of my family and every other family. Those voices have been silent for too long. And tonight, friends, is a time to let those voices to be heard. Shalom, friends. As we start this special evening for Yom HaShoah, I would like to start it with the song of the Shoah. It's the Jewish author Zelda who said, that every man has a name that is given to him by God. We have forgotten so many names because instead of being names, they became numbers. Numbers that are tattooed upon them, stripped from their humanity from their dignity, from their hopes, and from the family. And tonight we say, we remember. I have asked my good friend, Ted Pierce, to lead us in a segment called The Songs of the Shoah. Thank you for tuning in for this special evening. Let us stand and remember today these victims of the Shoah as we start our Yom HaShoah service.
I'd like to play a song about a dear friend of mine, Rose Price. She survived 6 camps, and later in life she came to faith. I want to do a song about her because she really taught us about forgiveness. Though our enemies hate us and though our enemies might try to kill us, carrying that bitterness is a heavy weight. So anyways, this is a song about Miss Rose Price. Rose of Sharon, you were the lily of the valley since the day that you were born. Oh, Rose of Sharon, no little girl should ever have to see the things that you have known. You know the price of love. You paid the price of love. How can I explain when my worst nightmare couldn't compare to what you live through every day? And just like a rose growing up on a playground of blood and broken bones, you know the price of love. You paid the price of love. There came a day when they rescued you, and now you were free to run away. And when you were the judge and had every right to hate every one of them and make them pay, you paid the price of love. Oh, you know the price of love. Said, Father, forgive them. Father, forgive them. For they know not what they do. How could you do it? How do you do it, Rose? And where can I find that kind of mercy? You've shown me things about myself no one else could have ever shown. Oh, Rose of Sharon, you made the world a better place because you paid the price. La 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 la.
In this very first segment that you are about to hear, you will hear the words of my mother. This was their words, the final words, the final conversation that I spoke with her right on Yom HaShoah. How ironic it is that it was the very last time that I spoke to her. I dedicate this very special segment to my mother, Esther Levin Friedman Shapira. May her memory be blessing, and may these words that you're about to hear will not just make you think about the past, but make you think about the future, the generation that we're in, and the great opportunity that lies ahead.
Shalom, everybody. First of all, I want to say it's a miracle. You mentioned, is this county called what is it called again? Van Zandt. Well, you speak Texan and I speak Hebrew. I have never met a Gentile till I was maybe 16 years old. So what is awesome God we all serve, that He can bring a Texan and an Israeli together to speak about the Jewish people. This is a miracle. This is my first time in the Van Zandt County, and I can tell you already, I feel safe. And there are not many places that Jewish people really feel safe nowadays. And I feel safe here because I can see your faces. And I know that you are standing with me today. You're standing with us and with the Jewish people, and you tie yourself together with the Jewish people. I want to start with a story, one of my favorite Bible story, about a man named Jonathan. Jonathan, the best friend of David. Jonathan in Hebrew, his name was Yonatan. But somehow he decided that no matter what he will do, he will tie his fate with David. And right there, in a blink of an eye, his name was changed from Jonathan, or in Hebrew, Yonatan, to the name of Yehonatan, a little Hebrew letter called Hey, who symbolized God, was written on his as an addition to his name. And I believe today, as we sit and stand in Canton, in this county, God is looking from the heavens and He's smiling at us, and He's adding His name to us today. What a blessing. But I want to share a little bit with you today. My name is Rabbi Itzhak Shapira, and I'm the rabbi of Ahavat Amim Messianic Jewish Synagogue. I was asked to address you today and share with you my personal connection to the Shoah. The Shoah is the Hebrew word to the Holocaust. But I would like to share it with you today, not as a religious leader, but as a son and a grandson of a Holocaust survivor. It's funny you mentioned the government. In 1986, the state of Israel passed a law in the Knesset, that's the Israeli governing body, that state that every man who refutes the Shoah in a written or in a verbal form will be sentenced to up to 5 years in jail. I wish that the same law will be employed globally. Even today, in the 21st century, in a time that it is the cool thing to speak about religious tolerance, so many in our great country today try to minimize the pain and the cry for those who were led to the gas chambers as lamb that is led into slaughter. Today, I believe it's a day that we must mourn, reflect, and to learn one Hebrew word. This word is slicha. Forgive us. Slicha means to repent. Slicha means today that we stand and we say, never again, never again. Slicha also means that we are to say today that we are accountable and responsible to stand with the Jewish people no matter what. Slicha also means that we say today, Niskor velo nishkach. We will remember and we will never forget. Throughout the world, the Yom HaShoah in the year by the Hebrew calendar, 5771, has a theme. The theme this year from Yom HaShoah, titled in Hebrew, Shivrei HaZikaron, which literally translated as this, the broken memories. Beyond the statistics of the 6 million souls were slaughtered, it was their memories that will never leave those who experienced the Holocaust, their families, and all of those who stood with the Jewish people against the Nazis regime. Every Man Has a Name was a song that was written by the Jewish psalmist Zelda. This later on became the theme for the Holocaust Memorial Day, this particular song. Today, we remember these mothers and fathers, children, grandchildren, and even unborn babies who died in the Shoah. Today, I remember my uncles, Reuven and Alterke. Today, I remember my aunt, Rivka. Today, I remember my grandmother, Shapira Friedman. They were not just statistics. They were my own family, my own flesh and blood that I never got to meet. I say today, may their memory and their names will be remembered and blessed forever. I would like to read to you a few lines from this powerful song on the memories of the Shoah, as I remember my own family. Every Man Has a Name by Zelda. Every man has a name given him by God and given him by his father and his mother. Every man has a name given him by his stature and his way of smiling and given to him by his clothes. Every man has a name given to him by the mountains and given to him by his walls. Every man has a name given to him by the planets and given to him by his neighbors. Every man has a name given to him by his sins and given to him by his longing. Every man has a name given to him by those who hate him and given to him by his love. Every man has a name given to him by his holidays and given to him by his handiwork. Every man has a name given him by the seasons of the year and given to him by his own blindness. Every man has a name given him by the sea and even given to him by his death. The question that I want to ask all of us today, what is our names? What do we want to be called today? Today we stand on the behalf of those who cannot stand. Today we stand on the behalf of those who cannot speak. And we are saying, our voices will represent your voices that were forgotten. Today I stand, I make an Amidah in behalf of my grandmother, Sefardi Friedman, Zichrona Levracha, may her memory be blessed. My aunt Rivka, Zichrona Levracha, may her memory be blessed. And my uncles, Altek and Reuven, may their memories be blessed. I make an amidah for all of you who lost a loved one in the Shoah. On a personal note, my mother, who also went through the Shoah, who is right now in Israel, dealing with a 4th stage of fatal cancer, has asked me to share this with you. She can barely talk right now, not so much, but she felt so strongly about what we're doing here today that she took everything she had to write this letter to you today. And she asked me to read this to you. So I do this for my mother right now. And here's the letter. My name is Esther Friedman Shapira. I was born in Vilna, and I am the last survivor of my whole family from the Shoah. I have 2 children in Israel and a son in Texas. I also have 3 beautiful grandchildren. In the name of my father, Moshe Friedman, in the memory of my mother, Shapira Friedman, in the memory of my sister, Rivka, in the memory of my 2 brothers, Alterke and Reuven, we will never forget those who were taken away from my parents, who never saw them again. I will never forget how my father cried and screamed at nighttime. I will never forget. My mother was handicapped. The Nazis had broken her arms and never put them in casts. They tried experimental shots on her, and because of that, she got nervous disorder, and therefore she was always shaking. The months before she died, she had a panic attacks from all of her memories she had from the Nazis. This is something that we should remember and never forget. After what my family and I went through, I still believe that the world can become a better and safer place for each one of us. It doesn't matter what color you are, where are you from, and what religious views you carry. Let's make sure that it will never happen again. Let's remember my father, Moshe Friedman, my mother, Shapira Friedman, my brother, Alterke, and Reuven, and all the 6 million innocent Jews who were murdered for nothing. God bless you all. God bless the Jews in the diaspora. God bless the world. God bless the Israel. God bless America. With love, Esther Shapira. I would like to conclude this letter with the word of another great Jew, Jesus of Nazareth, who said, "Forgive them, for they did not know what they do." The message of this great day is not just a message of remembrance, but it is also a message of hope. A hope that we, as Jews and as Christians, have learned from our past mistakes of humanity, and now we are to share this responsibility of telling the story of my family and the story of other families who represented here to the entire world. It was Anne Frank who said, everyone has inside of him a piece of good news. The good news is that you don't know how great you can be, how much you can love, what you can accomplish, and what is your potential. Thank you. I say to you today in Hebrew, Todah, for coming and listening for the story of my grandparents, Tzipora and Moshe, my uncles, Alterke and Reuven, my aunt, Rivka, my mother, Esther Friedman. May their names and memory will never be forgotten. May God bless America. May God bless Israel. And may there be peace upon all of us and all of Israel. Amen.
Before moving to the second segment, I would like all of us to recite together the word of the Kaddish and remembrance of the suffering of our people, even to these days, from anti-Semitism, anti-God, and anti-Messiah spirit. Will you join me together as in throughout those words of the Kaddish, we remember specific area in Jewish history, and we say today, never again. It Kadash, Vehit Kadal. Let me just start again. It wasn't good. I messed up. As we move to the second segment in our story, the story of the Shoah, it is important to us to understand that the spirit behind the Shoah is the spirit of anti-God and anti-Messiah. Anti-Semitism equivalent to being anti-Yeshua. And today we identify, just like Ruth, with our people, and we say, never again. Most people don't know it, but the Shoah did not take place only in Europe. It took place in other places. Right before the end of my father's life, he opened up to me and he shared with me the story of Razi, my uncle, his older brother, who was murdered in Iraq by a Nazi doctor. It was in the end of his life that my father, who was a Sephardic Jew, received a Holocaust survivor certification and support from the government. And today, I want to honor my uncle Razi and remember this story that brought so much pain to my grandfather, to grandmother, that they never shared it with me. It was shared only by my father in his last days. I would like to dedicate this Kaddish today for all those little children, all those unborn babies, and all those babies, kids, teenagers, young men and women with hope and aspirations. And we say today, indeed, It Kadash. May their name will be sanctified above today as we remember them. We say together, Itkadal, Vilna, Itkadash, Warsaw, Shemei Rabbah, Auschwitz, Be'alma Devachir Ute, Dachau, Ve'yamlich Malchute, Buchenwald, בחי אחד וביום אחד, שדרות, ובחיי בכלל בית ישראל, בגדד, בעגלה ובזמן קריב, אנטי-סמיטיזם, בעגלה ובזמן קריב, בס בומבן, והימרו אמן. יהא שמי רבה מבורך, לעולמי עלמיה, 6 million Jews. Yitbarach, messianic believers who die for Kiddush Hashem. Yitbarach ve'ishtabach, the IDF. Yitpa'ar ve'yitromam ve'yitnasa. Yom Kippur war and every other war. Ve'yitadar, terror attacks in Israel. Ve'yitaleh ve'yitalal, terror attacks in Yerushalayim. Shmed Grusha B'richu. All the Jewish people who suffer from the Inquisition specifically. Leola, Leola, the people who died holding the name of the God of Israel on their lips. Min kol birchata v'shirata, our rabbis, tush bechata v'nechemata, our leaders who fought and died for Israel, the Amrin Be'alma, the partisans, Ve'imru Amen, the entire physical house of Israel. And we conclude with the word, Oseh Shalom B'mroma, Hu Ya'aseh Shalom Aleinu, V'al Kol Israel, Ve'imru Amen. Let us watch together the story of Razi.
אז אתה נולדת בבגדד שמה.
אני נולדתי בבגדד.
הקהילה היהודית...
מה, רגע, תן לי. בגדד עיר יפהפייה הייתה.
מה אתה זוכר?
אני זוכר. כשהגעתי לישראל כבר הבנתי. אני זוכר שמשעה מסוימת במורגלת, שעה מסוימת בערב, שום משאית לא נכנסת לעיר.
וממה שאתה זוכר...
אתה חי כמו בחלום.
והקהילה היהודית הייתה עצומה.
אוקיי, פה מתחיל הסיפור. אם אתה רוצה קודם שאני אספר לאח שלי.
כן, תספר קצת על הרקע, תספר קצת על זה, כן.
ככה, אני יודע כשנפקחו עיניי בגיל 5 להבין,
נו.
כן? אני יודע שבשנת 40 או 41, לא, בשנת 41.
כן.
אני הייתי תינוק.
כן.
בעצם עוד לא נולדתי.
41 נולדת כבר.
אבי נסע לבצע.
אוקיי.
נסע לבצע לעסקים. כי שם היו העסקים, לב העסקים, מיליונרים. אבי עבד עם האנגלים שהגיעו בגלל הנפט שהתגלה בעיראק, הגיעו ללמד את הטכניקות
אוקיי.
של פיניש. ואז למעשה נולד הנפט בצורה מסחרית בעיראק,
אוקיי.
כי האנגלים היו מומחים בזה, ואבי עבד עם האנגלים בגלל שידע אנגלית טובה.
הבנתי.
וערבית טובה, אז הוא היה גם מתרגם. הוא עבד למעשה מטעם ממשלה, הוא עבד איתם.
הבנתי.
עכשיו, אני זוכר שהיה הרבה עצב בבית, כבר הייתי כבר בין 4-5, התחלתי להבין. היה גם שמחה, אבל היה עצב, תמיד דיברו על רזי.
רזי. מה זה?
רזי.
תסביר מה הפירוש של רזי, תסביר את זה.
רזי זה שם של המילה רז, זה סוד.
סוד.
זה סוד. הפירוש הכי חזק של זה סוד.
הבנתי.
או חידה.
חידה. ומי...
אבל היה עוד משהו. למה לאחי קראו רזי? רזי היה המלך של עיראק הצעיר שנרצח אחר כך על ידי עבדאללה. אז קראו לו שם המלך, ככה אבי רצה. אז רזי זה היה שם המלך. ואני יודע מהסיפורים שאבי נסע לבת שלה לעסקים, ורזי היה בגיל הזה שאתה רואה אותו בתמונה.
בין כמה הוא היה לפי דעתך? בין כמה לפי דעתך?
2.5, אתה רואה אותו איך הוא יושב. אבא שלי נסע לבת שלה לעסקים, כי הירושה שאימא שלי הייתה גם בבת שלה, אחרי שאבא שלה חלפן כספים הכי גדול בבת שלה. נפטר, והוא רצה לסדר את העניינים של הכספים, ושלא ירמו אותם בירושה. ואח שלי חלה, בדיוק הנאצים היו כבר, קראנו להם נאצים.
רגע, איך קראת להם בערבית?
בערבית קוראים להם נאצים. נאצים זה נאצים.
אז אני רוצה להבין משהו, כי אנשים לא מבינים את זה. בעיראק היו נאצים?
בטח. זה היה בשנת 41-2,
כאילו, הם היו מוסלמים שעבדו בשירות הנאצים?
לא, היה בעצמם הנאצים, הרבה נאצים. אחי, לא, היה סטסל גיסטו. הוא היה ילד מאוד בריא, וערני. הרופא שהזמינו, אמרו רופא בחוץ נאצי, אבל אז לא ידעו היהודים מה זה נאצי. אז הנאצי הזה נתן לו זריקה, תוך שעתיים הילד נפטר.
תוך שעתיים, ורגע, ומה... פחות משעתיים. היה ברור שהייתה רעלה, ראו גם עליו את החיוב שלו, שהוא נותן לו את הזריקה. אוי.
וזה בן בכור, אבא שלי מגיע מבצרה. בסוף העולם. הוא מגיע לבן היפה שלו, אם אתה שם לב, צחי, לי יש עיניים מלוכסנות, נכון?
כן.
אתה שם לב, ולך יש עיניים מלוכסנות במידת מה, נכון?
כן.
ושים לב על התמונה של רזי, עיניים מלוכסנות.
ילד יפה.
בלונדיני, מה אתה מדבר? רק אני סיבלתי את הצבע של השחלחל, מאמא שלי שהייתה בגדדית, עיראקית. אבל החיות שלי כולם, אתה יודע, שהן בהירות מאוד.
כן.
בהירות מהעתודות שלך.
אז
התחילו לצעוד, גם הממשלה העיראקית התחילה לרדוף את היהודים. תלו אחד קראו לו עדס, אני זוכר.
איך
הוא
קראו?
היה חבר של עדס.
ומי זה היה?
מיליונר של בגדד.
נו.
תלו אותו בשו"ת על האשמת חתרנות ציונית.
יהודי.
בטח, ואז כל ה...
רגע, כשאתה אומר תלו אותו, תסביר לי מה אתה מתכוון כשאתה אומר תלו אותו.
תלו אותו בשו"ת, תלו אותו.
מה, בפומבי?
בטח, שיראו ויראו.
וואו.
אז כל היהודים כבר היו בלחץ. התחילו לסגור עליהם. סבא שלך שינה את השם. ממשפחת שפירא שמרו שינה את השם למרדכי.
רגע, מי זה היה מרדכי? תסביר.
מרדכי זה סבא שלי, זה הרב ידוע מאוד בעיראק, היה מקובל גדול. יש עליו אגדות בעיראק.
אז הוא שינה את השם.
כן, גידל פתאום צפם שהתחיל להתחפש, כי הוא היה חבר של עדס, פחד שיעצור, התחילו לעצור את החברים של עדס.
אז התחילו לעצור, אז בוא נשאל אותך שאלה, אולי אתה כבר לא זוכר, בגיל 4, בגיל 5, אתה כבר הבנת מה זה אנטישמיות או עוד לא?
לא הבנתי כלום.
כי לא היה פחד?
לא הייתה מילה כזו, הייתה עניין שלי טיפת יהודי.
לא היה פחד כאילו שידעת שאתה יהודי?
אוקיי. התחיל כל ציון בגולה, קראו לזה. התחילו לשדר מישראל. פתחו תחנה בעברית. והייתה תחנה גם בערב ישראל. לכל כתבו אותה בעיראק.
רגע, שנייה. אתם ידעתם קצת עברית? ידעתם קצת עברית?
אני למדתי בספר יהודי.
סבא כמובן ידע.
שמה, בטח, סבא גמר את החדר, גמר את הגמרא בעל פה, הוא היה צריך להיות חתן ברב. אבל האבא שלו, סבא שלי ראובן, קיבל שבת מוחי והשתתק, והוא בן 14, לומד ביום ובלילה בקברטים. היה מקדש כזה שתולים אותו על שבת, ומוכר מסטיקים וסוכריות.
אז למעשה הוא היה צריך לעזוב את החדר בשביל לפרנס את המשפחה שלו, כן?
הוא פסיים את החדר. ואל תשכח שהיה לו עוד 6 אחים, עוד 7 אחים ואחיות. הוא בתור 14 הבחור, הוא היה צריך, הוא היה אחראי לגדל את כולם.
וואו.
אבל היה נס לאבא שלי, שהוא כבר מבוגר היה, עד שאמא שלי הכירה אותו והתחתנו, והיה נס שהכיר את אמא שלי, היא באה מירושה מיליונר, אברהם משה, הסבא שלי שאני על השם שלו.
הבנתי.
והסבתא שלי יפה, ג'מילה, אתה יודע, היא הבלונדינית, עד הסוף.
אז רגע, אני רוצה עוד פעם להבין, אתה בילד בגיל 4-5, כמובן היית רק סביב יהודים, נכון?
מה הייתי?
כאילו היית סביב היהודים, ברוב כאילו, היה כבר פחד בקהילה היהודית. עוד.
אז רגע, אבא שלי והדוד שלי צבי, הרי גרנו באותו בית, היה חמולות כאלה.
כן.
והיינו יוצאים למרתף, ומזיעים שם חוממים, ואני לא מבין למה הם מתחבאים במרתף, עוד ילד, הייתי בן 5 אולי. ואני רואה אותם, אולי הייתי בן 6.
נו.
אני כ4 שנים אחרי זה עלינו לארץ.
נו.
מזיעים, ושומעים את כל ישראל בגולה.
שנייה, אתה ידעת כאילו אי פעם מאז שאח שלך נפטר, אבא שלך או אמא שלך אי פעם אמרו לך משהו על זה?
לא, אבל דיברו ביניהם.
לא, אפילו בגיל יותר מבוגר אני אומר.
בטח, אמא שלי תמיד הזכירה אותו, רק אמא שלי הזכירה אותו.
ומה
אמא שלי לפני המוות, יום לפני המוות, אמרה לי קודם כל, גילתה לי שהשם שלי בגלל מחלוקת שהייתה בינה לבין אבא שלי כשנולדתי, השם שלי לא רק אברהם, בגלל שהסכסוך בין אבא שלי והאמא שלי על השם שלי, השם, אבא שלי הציע פשרה והמן נקרא לו שלום. זה רק ביום המוות גילתה לי את זה, בשביל זה אני הכנסתי את המילה שלום בתוספת לאברהם.
הבנתי. אבל על האח שלך היא לא אמרה שום דבר.
ביום לפני המוות, אמרה לי, האבני, יש לנו באלבום תמונה של אח שלך, רזי, תביא לי אותה, אבל באותו לילה היא כבר מתה.
היא ביקשה את זה יום לפני שהיא...
היא ביקשה לפני המוות שאני לראות. אמרתי לה, אמא, תראי, המצב שלך לא כל כך טוב. אמרתי, תן לי לראות אותו, להריח את התמונה.
מה?
להריח את התמונה שלי.
מה אתה אומר? ביום לפני שהיא נפטרה.
תראה מה זה אמא. תראה, אין כמו אמא. אם זה אמא בטבע, בעלי חיים, אם זה אמא בן אדם, ואם זה קרוב לוודאי שגם אלוהינו הגדול, השמיים, הוא היה נקבה, שהרחמנות שלו היא כמו אמא.
שמו אל שדי, גם היה גם אב וגם אם. הוא שניהם.
מה?
שמו נקרא אל שדי, הוא גם אב וגם אם. הקדוש ברוך הוא.
הוא יותר כי רק יכולה להיות רחמניה כזו. עם ישראל חטא הרבה, ועדיין הוא חוטא.
כן, זה נכון. זה מדהים, אז היא...
אבל כל פעם הוא סלח לו.
אמן.
לפני שחרב פה ואמר להדביק אותו. אבל הוא נתן כמו אמא שמחנכת ילד, שהילד לא בסדר, להצטרף לו את ההזמקה על הטוצ'י. אבל זה לא בנוע. אז ככה בגלל זה, השתפק שמו אלוהים שבשמיים, הוא כל פעם טיפץ אותנו על ידי כל מיני מכות שבאו על עם ישראל.
נכון.
The message of the Shoah does not just bring sadness, depth, pain, and agony. In the core of it, there is an historic rectification. And in this segment, I would like to share with you a a story of a Nazi-Descendant who have had an encounter with the God of Israel. I could have never dreamed of being able to sit down with a Nazi-Descendant and have such a love for such a precious man. I had a chance to sit with Reuven and hear his story and hear the shame that he is carrying. Thank you that the shame has been lifted up because the God of Israel is alive. Even in Germany, he's still working today. Turn with me to this special segment when myself and Reuben had a chance to sit down for a heart-to-heart discussion. Shalom, Chaverim. This is Rabbi Itzhak Shapira for this usually special program called When Jews Meet Yeshua. But today, it's when a German shepherd and Dominican, I don't know what to call you even. We're going to have to come up with a nickname.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yes.
Vamos a tener que venir crear un apodo para ti porque no sabemos ni qué eres ya.
But I want to do this in a multilingual interview.
Y quiero hacer esto en esta entrevista de múltiple lenguaje, o sea, para traducir.
And I want to get to business with both of you for a second, serious.
Y quiero de verdad entrar en negocio con ustedes seriamente.
Pastor Manny, you have been the coordinator on site here of this prophetic march.
Pastor Manny, usted ha sido el coordinador de esta marcha profética.
You have been the coordinator on all of the Americas of those marches.
Yes.
Y Pastor Rubén, usted ha sido el coordinador de toda la Sudamérica en estas marchas.
I actually want to start with you, Pastor Reuven.
Quiero empezar contigo, Pastor Rubén.
This has been a very different march than other marches.
Esta ha sido una marcha muy diferente a todas las marchas.
Take us through what been in your heart, what you felt through the spirit that took place here today.
Llévanos a lo que está en tu corazón, a lo que pasó aquí hoy, ¿qué está en tu espíritu?
Yo estoy realmente sorprendido. I'm really
Speak in
surprised.
English.
Okay, I'm really surprised about what we saw today.
Estoy bien sorprendido de lo que vi hoy.
I had seen that there were many people that were on fire for Israel and on fire for Jewish people.
Vi mucha gente en fuego por Israel y por los judíos.
But I didn't think that we would be able to have a march like we did today.
Y yo no pensé que pudiéramos haber tenido una marcha como la que tuvimos
I
hoy.
was impressed by the excellence of all the things that were done.
Estaba impresionado con todas las cosas excelentes que se hizo.
And I was impressed by the heart that people were putting into all of this.
Y estaba impresionado con el corazón que puso la gente en todo esto.
And I'm really happy to be able to say
Y estoy muy contento de poder decir
that it was visible that God was really pleased with what was going on.
que fue visible que Dios estaba complacido con esta marcha.
Hasta we even had a rainbow around the sun.
Incluso tuvimos un arco iris alrededor del sol.
But I was kind of between crying because of the emotion, what was going on,
Yo estaba con emociones mixtas entre casi llorando por lo que estaba pasando
and rejoicing because I saw so much love, so much love.
y en gozo porque vi tanto amor, sí, tanto amor.
It was really, really special. Probably
Fue
I
muy
wrote to
especial.
Germany to the guys who are in charge, who are the founders of the March of Life.
Fue muy emocionante, le escribí a los fundadores de la Marcha de la Vida.
And I said, probably this march was, for me, the most anointed march I've had in all those years we're doing marches in Latin America.
Probablemente esta marcha fue una de las más
For me
ungidas de
too,
todas las
by
marchas
far.
que yo he celebrado.
I would
Y
agree
para
with
mí
this.
también, yo estoy de
Pastor
acuerdo.
Manny,
Pastor Manny,
you work so hard,
tú trabajas tan duro.
and I know it's been overwhelming.
Yo sé que ha sido mucho, demasiado.
What took place here today,
Aquí lo que pasó aquí hoy.
how did that make you feel today? I saw a lot of emotions from you.
¿Cómo te hace sentir hoy? Vi muchas emociones en ti.
Impresionante lo que ha pasado en nuestro país, República Dominicana.
Very impressed with what happened in our country, Dominican Republic.
En la historia de nuestra nación, yo nunca había visto lo que vi hoy.
In the history of our nation, I have never seen what happened today.
Todas las comunidades
All the communities,
se unificaron
they the United,
y impactó mi vida.
and impacted my life.
Ver personas sencillas,
See just simple people,
humilde,
humble people,
personas con hambre
people with hunger,
de darle el primer lugar a
to
Yeshua.
give Yeshua the first place, to be the
Y
first.
en nuestra nación nunca se había visto una marcha como esa.
In our nation, we have never had a march like this.
Inclusive el gobierno cuando hace sus actividades una vez al año,
And including the government, they have their own activity
ellos
once a year.
desfilan,
They just
pero
march,
no se parece a lo de nosotros.
but it doesn't look like what we did.
Y fue impresionante ver cómo las comunidades se unificaron,
And I was really impressed to see the
y aún,
community come together,
personas seculares,
including secular
llevar
people,
3 bandas de música
to bring 3 bands of
del
music.
gobierno. Eso es un milagro.
Government band, that's a miracle.
La banda de música de la policía,
That's the band of the police department,
la banda de música de la Marina de Guerra,
the Marines,
la banda de música de la Fuerza Aérea.
and the Air Force. So 3 bands.
Eso fue algo impresionante.
That was very impressive.
Y algo que impactó mi vida fue
Something
ustedes,
that
cómo
impacted my life.
ustedes están integrados.
Like you, how you are integrated, both
y
of you.
cómo ustedes, a pesar de que tienen un orden muy específico,
Besides that, you guys have your own
sin
orders,
embargo, ustedes
specific orders.
saben identificar cuándo darle libertad
So
al Ruach HaKodesh para que él dirija.
so you know how to identify when to give the space, the freedom for the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, to direct.
República Dominicana fue marcada.
The Dominican Republic was marked.
Aún Haití, que hace frontera con República Dominicana,
Even Haiti, that is right on the border,
ellos también recibieron.
they also received.
Habían hermanos de Haití que estaban marchando.
They were brothers from Haiti marching with us.
Muy interesante.
It was
Hoy se
very
rompió una
interesting.
cadena de
The chains
quizás
were
un poco de
broken.
enemistad, y la
And the
marcha
message,
decidió que los haitianos también marcharan.
so because of the march, Haitian people, they also marched.
Y hoy cuando fueron a esa iglesia
And today
de
when
la
we
más
went to
fuerte
this
aquí en
church,
República
one
Dominicana,
of the
es un
strongest
milagro
one,
porque
that was a miracle
en
today.
tan poco tiempo
Because in a
llegar
short
a esa congregación
to be in this
y
congregation,
durar más de una hora ministrando,
and
eso
then just
no es normal.
minister and preach for a whole, an hour, that's not normal.
Creo que República Dominicana tiene un nuevo comienzo.
I think the Dominican Republic has a new beginning.
Y estamos, todo el pueblo está dispuesto a unirse para
The
seguir
people is willing to
con
unite,
esta visión que ustedes
to
quieren.
continue the vision.
Look, we pray for 2 things. I want to ask you
Ora-
one more question.
Oramos por 2 cosas, quiero
We
preguntarte una
pray-
pregunta más.
For a covenantal relationship,
Oramos por una relación de pacto,
a new covenant, a new beginning,
un nuevo pacto, un nuevo
a
comienzo,
Jeremiah 31 type of prophetic
un pacto profético así como Jeremías 31.
covenant
Pacto.
with the Jewish people, with Israel.
Los judíos, Israel.
You are dealing probably more than anybody else in Pastor Ruben with those marches and being a descendant
Usted, me imagino que enfrenta más como siendo descendiente en estas marchas y toda esta
of Nazis. And
descendiente nazi.
you said something today
Usted dijo algo hoy
that struck me more than anything else in this march.
que me impactó más que todo en esta marcha
Oh, and it just hit me.
y me dio.
When you said, do you think it's easy for me
¿Y tú crees que es fácil para mí
to come here and said I'm sorry a million times?
de venir aquí a decir perdón 1,000,000 de veces?
I said, why, it's gonna get on my nerves
Eso me está dando en el nervio.
to say I'm sorry.
De decir
And now
perdón.
my ministry is a ministry going around
Y ahora mi ministerio es un ministerio de andar alrededor.
saying I'm sorry all the
Está
time.
diciendo perdón todo el tiempo.
But then I saw
Pero después yo vi
that that's really what strengthened the ministry.
que eso en realidad es lo que fortalece el ministerio.
This continuous attitude.
Esta actitud de continuidad.
I want to ask you about this attitude. I know there are a lot of people in the churches
Quiero preguntarte de esta actitud. Yo sé que hay mucha
that
gente
say
en
they
las
love
iglesias.
Israel, they support it.
Dicen muchas iglesias, amamos a Israel, apoyamos a Israel.
But isn't it true that we all need to say as a church, as the church, we are sorry
Pero no es cierto que nosotros todos como iglesia debemos
It's
decir
not
perdón.
easy.
No es fácil.
I got to ask you,
Yo te quiero preguntar,
how do you do it,
¿cómo lo
man?
haces?
I-
Hombre, ¿cómo lo haces?
I just want to know. When I saw you say that,
Y cuando yo vi que tú dijiste eso,
I saw the Spirit of the Lord,
vi el
man.
Espíritu de Dios.
That was
del
Yeshua
Señor.
that I saw.
Y fue a Yeshua que yo vi.
Because in your humanity, there's no way you want to run around saying, I'm sorry. There's just no way.
Porque en tu humanidad no es verdad que tú vas a querer estar diciendo perdón.
No. So I want to ask you about this.
Quiero
What's going through your
preguntarte.
mind in this thing?
¿Qué pasa por tu mente?
And does the church as a whole,
Y la
I guess the
iglesia
second part,
como entera,
does it need to say, I'm
como
sorry
cuerpo.
today?
Dice perdón hoy.
Well, it's really not easy.
No es fácil, no es fácil.
But as I said too,
Como yo
as long
dije,
as I know that there's somebody that's still suffering,
al menos si yo sé que alguien está sufriendo
todavía still suffering from what happened in the
y
Holocaust,
todavía que está sufriendo por lo que pasó en el Holocausto.
this is my commitment with the Lord.
Este es mi compromiso con
I will
el
not
Señor.
stop asking for
No
forgiveness
me voy a parar de pedir perdón.
because I believe that the only way this can be healed
Porque yo creo que de la única manera que esto puede ser sanado
is by somebody humiliating himself
es alguien humillándose
and the other one
mismo,
letting touch.
y la otra persona
I
dejarse
remember-
tocar.
I remember when for the first time when we did that to ask for forgiveness.
Yo me acuerdo la primera vez que pedimos perdón.
And the next day we had a meeting in a Jewish community.
El otro día tuvimos una reunión
Was
en
right
la
on Yom
comunidad
HaShoah.
judía, ahí cerca del día del
And one of
Holocausto.
the survivors, when she was lighting the light,
Y una-
the candle,
Una de las sobrevivientes que estaba encendiendo fue como un puñal que me estaba pegando. me estaba-
but at the same time I understood
Pero al mismo tiempo
it's her
entendí,
decision too.
es su decisión también.
I understand her,
Yo lo entiendo.
and I think that to go to the second question, I
Y yo creo
think
que para ir a la segunda pregunta,
that the evangelical church and the church, Catholic Church, anyways,
creo que la iglesia evangélica y la católica,
we need to ask for forgiveness.
nosotros necesitamos pedir perdón.
Because we have been teaching about God throwing away the Jewish people.
Es que hemos estado enseñando que Dios votó a la gente judía, a los
We
pocos
have been
judíos.
teaching about replacement theology.
Y hemos estado enseñando de reemplazo de teología.
We have kicked out Jewish feasts, Jewish covenant out of the church.
Hemos pateado las fiestas del Señor y los pactos fuera de las
And
iglesias.
even when you start to try to talk about those things,
Incluso cuando tú tratas de hablar de esas cosas,
I see it very often when I tell people that we do Shabbat.
yo le digo a las personas, hacemos Shabbat.
We are not doing it like a Jew because we are not.
No nos estamos haciendo como judíos porque no somos
But we
judíos.
try to honor those parts of the covenant.
Pero estamos tratando de honrar esa parte del pacto.
Because we understood that this is a blessing
Porque tú entiendes que es una
and God is
bendición.
waiting for this.
Y Dios está
People
esperando por
start
eso.
looking at you like you're gonna make me a Jew.
Y la gente te ve como tú me vas a
And as long
judaizar.
as there, I think we need in the church we have to keep on
Y
asking
mientras
for
esta
forgiveness,
siga ahí en la
that we are
iglesia,
not
hay que
willing to
seguir pidiendo
understand
perdón.
what's going on.
No están dispuestos a entender lo que está
Yeah,
pasando.
but you know what I'm thinking about?
¿Sabes lo que estoy pensando?
I'm thinking about Rabbi Akiva.
Estoy pensando en el rabino Akiva.
Most people don't know that.
Mucha gente no lo sabe.
His parents were converts to Judaism.
Sus padres eran conversos al judaísmo.
And he became probably the greatest rabbi of the second century.
Él se hizo, si no, el más grande de
Son
los
of a
rabinos
converts. Why do I
hijo de
think about it?
conversos.
I'm thinking about your children.
Yo pienso sobre tus
You have a
hijos.
daughter.
Tú
Yes.
tienes una hija.
Your daughter
Tu hija
studies.
piensa que tan bueno es Dios.
She will be raised up basically knowing about the Shabbat
Ella va a crecer conociendo el
and
Shabbat,
about the feasts
de las fiestas
and only to the Jewish roots of her faith.
y agarrada de la fe judía.
Her descendants were Nazis,
Cuando
Yes.
sus descendientes eran nazis, o sea,
but she will have a Jewish identity.
pero va a tener
Yes.
una identidad judía.
That's the power of
Ese
the
es el
God of
poder
Israel.
de
Yes.
Dios de
That's it,
Israel.
yeah.
Yes.
And I think this is powerful
Esto es poderoso.
because she will have a heritage
Ella va a
Yes.
tener una herencia
completely different.
completamente diferente.
Yeah.
You know, we talk about the sins of the
O
fathers,
sea, hablamos de los pecados de los padres,
But in your case,
Pero en tu caso,
it will count as merit.
Yes.
cuenta como un mérito.
And that's why I'm really excited.
Y por eso
that's
yo estoy
true.
muy
That's
excitado en
amazing.
cuanto a esto.
I want to get to the final word from you,
Yo
Pastor.
quiero tener la palabra final.
Touch on it.
Dice que pateamos el pacto.
We have theological, I would use the word gap, I'm being generous.
Y una brecha,
Mhm.
una brecha
Teológica.
teológica.
I was even here, teaching,
Yo estaba aquí enseñando
and I sense
y yo sentí
anti-Jewish spirit. It doesn't mean it's anti-Semitic
un espíritu antijudío, ¿no?
in a clear, visible way.
No significa que sea antisemético, pero
Anti-Jewish
que
spirit can be
una
from
visión clara.
lack of understanding.
Puede ser falta de entendimiento,
See, but I think there's another side of this.
pero yo creo que hay otro lado a esto.
The church has been wearing I will use the term, the crown of glory
La iglesia, y yo quiero usar este término, la corona de gloria,
for 2,000 years.
por 2000 años,
Jewish people are waking up
y los judíos ahora están despertando.
and they say, move over a little bit.
Y ahora dice, muévete un poquito.
As Jews,
Como judíos,
we're the big brothers.
somos los hermanos mayores.
Maybe the little brother need to let the older brothers come and join the party.
Los hermanos pequeños tienen que dejar que los hermanos grandes vengan y se
Sí.
junten a la fiesta.
I want to ask you a sincere question.
Quiero preguntarte una pregunta.
No
sincera.
fluff answer. Real answer.
Yo quiero una respuesta real.
How do we fix it?
¿Cómo lo arreglamos?
I mean, obviously, the march here was a huge step forward.
Obviamente la marcha fue un paso adelante,
But
grande.
how do we fix those things?
¿Cómo arreglamos estas cosas?
In essence, I'm asking, how do we prepare the bride?
¿Cómo preparamos la novia?
Él predicó hoy sobre
You taught, you preached today
ayudarnos y
about
yo creo mucho
helping each other.
en la unidad.
And I believe a lot in
Y yo
unity.
creo que la única forma que vamos a lograr eso
And the only way we're
es
going
con
to be successful
la ayuda
with
de
that
él,
is with
la
your
ayuda
help,
de
with
Rubén.
Pastor Ruben's
Y
help.
yo creo que si nos unimos
And if we unite each
y
other,
cada quien según el don que
and
tiene,
each of us with our own
entonces
gifts,
cuando unimos esos
and
dones
when we just bring all the
y
gifts
hacemos
together,
un solo equipo,
and we just become one
lo
team,
vamos a lograr.
we're going to
Y
make it.
República Dominicana se une a
And
esta
Dominican
visión,
Republic is
Nos
united
unimos
with this
a la
vision,
marcha de la vida.
March of Life.
Cuenten con nosotros.
Count on us.
I'm going to say something on air.
Y yo voy a decir algo aquí en el aire.
I have an agenda.
Yo tengo una agenda.
Okay, I will confess it to
Yo
you.
lo voy a confesar a ti.
When I read in the scripture about the one new man,
Cuando yo leo la escritura sobre el nuevo hombre,
I don't see a gentle one new man.
yo no veo un gentil nuevo hombre.
I see a Jewish one new man.
Yo veo un judío nuevo hombre.
Okay, and my heart to tell you,
Y en mi corazón te dice,
I want to Judaize you
yo quiero judaizarte. Mi corazón me dice, yo te quiero judaizar.
in the spirit of
En
them,
mi espíritu.
not in the physical
En el
way.
espíritu, no en el físico.
But something telling you already been Judaized by the mighty one of
Pero
Israel.
Dios dice que ya el Dios de Israel te ha judizado.
It says in the end of the book of Esther
Dice en el final del libro de Esther
that the fear of the Lord fall.
que el temor de Dios,
Is the term Judaize.
cuando yo uso el término
I don't mean
judaizar,
it in the way you think I mean it.
no lo refiero como tú crees que lo digo.
I mean it, bringing the covenants back
Yo lo digo es traer el pacto de
to those who
vuelta
have been grafted in.
a esos que han sido injertados.
You have tremendous work ahead of
Tú
yourself.
tienes mucho trabajo frente a ti.
But here is what I'm taking from this march.
Pero déjame decirte lo que yo tomo de esta marcha,
There are different levels
los diferentes niveles.
and our theological,
Y tal vez,
really looking at our theology
y tal vez hay silencio en nuestra teología, mirando bien la teología
and our relationship between us
y la relación entre nosotros
and all of Israel.
y todo Israel.
So my wish to both of you,
Mi deseo para los dos,
I could never imagine.
yo no puedo imaginarme
I will
nunca
do an event like this with the German.
que yo haría un evento así con el alemán.
I think this is crazy.
Yo creo que esto es una locura
And I remember now
y yo recuerdo ahora,
in 2010,
en 2010,
when he was there,
cuando él estaba ahí,
I still had the sense
yo todavía tengo el sentimiento
Keep me away from the Germans.
Aléjame de
I
los alemanes.
remember it. It
Ahora
came
lo
back to
recuerdo,
me.
me regresó a la memoria.
Keep me away from the Germans.
Manténme lejos de los alemanes.
And I tell you what,
Y te digo que,
I just love.
ahora te digo, ahora
I love this German.
amo este alemán.
And I bless you in the name of
Y
Yeshua.
te bendigo en el nombre de Yeshua. Vamos todos a ser parte de la restauración de Israel.
God bless you.
Dios te bendiga.
I wish you Mazel Tov. Congratulations.
Yo te deseo felicidades.
This has been amazing.
Esto ha sido maravilloso.
I'm honored by you.
Estoy
Shalom.
Shalom.
Shalom and shalom to all of you.
Shalom a todos.
Lehitraot.
Lehitraot.
להתראות. Thank you for tuning in for this very last segment. We call it From Horror to Hope, where myself, amongst several others, had a chance to tell our story briefly. The story of the Shoah, the story of the impact that he has made upon our families. Please understand that even in this story of the Shoah, there is hope to those who trust in him. So sit back, listen to the stories, and listen to those testimonies. God bless you.
It's hard to believe that just a short time ago, hell was unleashed here on earth. It was called the Holocaust. And although few survivors remain today, generations are still suffering. What you're about to see and hear may shock you, but it is vital that we never forget the horror of the Holocaust.
I was 14 years old when I survived the Holocaust. And one of the reasons at that time I wasn't talking about it is because who was going to believe a 14-year-old child, such a nightmare?
I was born in one of the death camps, Nazi Germany. I was experiment on it. That's when my life begins, in a death camp.
When the Nazis were advancing towards Russia, they would go ahead and they would literally liquidate whole villages of Jews on the way into Russia as they were advancing. And so one of those villages was the village called Kibishik, in my grandparents.
In both sides of the families, people were lost, but by far in my mother's side, hardly anybody made it.
I don't have a lot of extended family here because it takes a few generations to develop that, and Hitler just killed off everything.
And my father was 13 when World War II broke out. Literally, he was thrust into World War II, standing outside and watching the Nazis come in and invade his country.
The flames were everywhere, and of course, a lot of people in Warsaw knew, even if they lived far away, because the wind carried a lot of ash. And We knew that there was a hell going on.
When I came into the camp in 1944 in Auschwitz, and I had my first experience watching innocent children die, I was very angry with God. I was angry with him for allowing for these people to do this.
My mother was smuggled on Nazi Germany by nuns when she was a young girl, and her sister was smuggled as well, and she was indelibly marked by all that.
In the summer of 1941, which is they call it the deadly summer, in one summer and 2 months, 40,000 Jews were sent to the ghetto Vilna, okay? So some of those little boys that were my uncles, they were sent to the ghetto Vilna, and they were trying to escape Vilna. Unfortunately, it was already too late.
And they rounded up the whole Jewish community, mothers, children, fathers, grandfathers, wouldn't matter, babies, wouldn't matter what the age was, made them strip naked completely, and they dug a mass grave, and they machine gunned down every single person in the village.
What I think is amazing is that my father decided to join the resistance, even though he didn't have to. And he said he wanted to stay and fight for his country and fight with his comrades and fight sheer evil.
There wasn't a patriotism at the time. It was the obligation.
In Lithuania, there were 228,000 Jews. 94% were exterminated. Just the numbers, and you understand that this is a shocking numbers.
Lithuania was the great theological seminaries of Judaism for hundreds of years, and so it was prime pickings for the Nazis. When they came in, they were able to, and they came in there fairly early in the war. They were able to literally wipe out and obliterate the cream of Jewish religious leadership.
To me, the Holocaust in the Ukraine is worse. They rounded up Jews and they pretty much buried alive many of them.
6 million Jewish people were murdered during that time period, and there were 5 million other people who were also murdered.
And here's the scariest and most horrifying thing to me of the 6 million. 1.5 million of the 6 were little children.
God had a calling for them. God had a specific path of life that he had from them. And all of this was cut off and was destroyed in a blink of an eye. And I realized they are not just statistics. None of those people are statistics. There are names that God given them.
There was a lot of bad things that happened to me. There was a lot of unforeseen circumstances that happened that are actually unbelievable.
I was separated from my mother, and I was put in the orphanages and prison and beaten, torture, rape, and not allowed to go to school. Didn't know how to read and write. Only spoke Polish and a little bit Russian, and the life was living hell.
It was a miracle that I lived. I lived where hunger and thirst and death was constantly around me. And I lived through it.
They did everything they could to survive.
We crawled, we tiptoed very quietly, and Germans apparently got tired shooting at us because suddenly got very quiet. And somebody says, oh my God, they're gonna attack, and we're out of positions and before we even escape, and we had no idea where we're going to escape to.
There was no place to escape above ground, so we escaped through the sewers.
My mother told me some of the things they were, they had to beg, they had to, going through whatever they could just to get by.
What got me through it was that there was another little Holocaust survivor. She was about 6 years of age, and I was the same age. And she gave me a hope.
Everything that I experienced and I saw, everything I endured and I got through it was with God's help, because I couldn't have done it on my own.
After 5 years of war and 6 months starving in a prisoner of war camp, at 90 pounds and 6 feet tall, my dad escaped. And ultimately, Was in the woods, saw a plane come by, thought it was a German plane, and luckily it turned out to be a American plane.
We all started jumping up and down, hugging each other. So after all that misery, we happened to just hit the jackpot.
When the Americans liberated me, the American army, and I wasn't sure yet that I was free, but I had the feeling that they were my friends, that they weren't gonna hurt me. And that's when I looked up to heaven, and the first time after that day, said, thank you, God, for watching over us.
The world continue on, life continue on, but those people who went through this thing never ever recover. And I can look at even my mother and say she has never ever recovered from this.
My memories of mother are smoking cigarettes nonstop, pill bottles, laying around in bed, wound up dying in a mental hospital.
As life went on, I started to rebuild my life and rebuild a new family, create a new family, because I lost all my family. And I didn't want that, my past, to be part of my future and my family. I didn't want, after I have children, I didn't want them to know, because I didn't want them to live in my pain.
My mother never opened up until the very, very last days. She recently passed away.
We said we could get mom out of Germany, but we had trouble getting Germany out of mom.
I remember a few weeks before she passed, she started telling me and telling me and telling me and telling me. And she could barely even speak. But she said, listen, it's really important that you know this, so you can share it with your son.
My sisters, half-sisters, present me with the ashes of my mother. And I said that Mama want to be buried in a Stutt camp because she want to be with those women who died over there.
That's when it really turned around. Like a scar that never fully was healed until our last days.
To entering to your own death camp, pull your papers, and that's where you were born, that's where you were experimented, and it was just...
For decades, I did not have a father present in my life. I could see that he was physically traumatized by all the scars all over his body, but also emotionally traumatized, so much so that he put this wall of silence and didn't talk with anyone about it, not even my mother, certainly not us.
To explain to your children what happened, that was the hardest thing. My children almost lost it. They almost separated themselves from God. They don't even want to have nothing to do with the Jews and Christianity, nothing, you know, and it was hard for me.
When my mother passed away, it was almost as if a stranger died. My father was completely numb.
My children, when they found out that I was a Holocaust survivor, they just did not ever, they didn't ask me again anything else about the Holocaust, because they were so angry that they did this to me that they didn't want to know anymore.
It wasn't until I reached out and said, I want to learn what you went through. I want to learn who you are. I want to learn who I am, that I found my father, and I found a loving man after he's been able to finally be free and share the story.
There are 4 diamonds mounted in this teardrop-shaped necklace that my mother gave me before we went to the camps. And because when they told us that we are going to the vineyard to work in the factories, she said, if you get hungry, these diamonds are in your skirt sewn in. So if we work in separate places and you get hungry, buy bread for these diamonds. But I could not buy bread for the diamonds the whole time I was in that camps, because the bread was more precious than the diamonds. And it would have been safer if I threw them away. But the love and the strength that they carried was stronger than the Nazi hatred. So I swallowed and retrieved the diamonds as many times as I had to, and I have them today. They are to be given to each firstborn girl in my family forever and ever. They're never are allowed to sell them or trade them unless, God forbid, they are hungry. They are to buy bread.
When hearing the personal stories of the Holocaust, one cannot help but wonder, how did such a senseless tragedy happen? And what are the warning signs we need to be aware of for the future?
We must remember the horror of the Holocaust so that it's never, ever repeated again. And we must remember those who survived the unimaginable, because they're only with us a short while.
It has to be told and retold and showed and reshowed so people never forget.
I think it's important that people remember the Holocaust itself, simply to be reminded of the fact that people can do evil things. And by virtue of good people doing nothing, they can allow evil things to happen.
If somehow this crazy lie can be believed that the Holocaust never happened, it almost invalidates the whole cry of saying never again. What do you mean never again? Nothing ever happened in the first place. It's all exaggerated. It's all lies, which actually paves the way for fresh persecution of Jewish people. Because if there never was a Holocaust, then what is there to prevent? And so it's very subtle, but very insidious and very evil.
Anyone with a sensitivity, anyone with aware of the fragility of God's civilization and how easily it can descend to barbarism, has a personal relationship with the Holocaust.
1,200 civilians walked from the neighboring city of Weimar to begin a forced tour of the camp. There are many smiling faces, and according to observers, at first the Germans act as though this was something being staged for their benefit. These people are compelled to see what their own government had perpetrated. One of the first things that the German see as they reach the interior of the camp is the parchment display. On a table for all to gaze upon is a lampshade made of human skin, made at the request of an SS officer's wife.
The mantra in Germany was, we just didn't know. The question is, how do you move 6 million people? How do you dispossess millions of them, hand over their properties to others, move them around through the rail and what have you to get people to these camps? Most people just wanted to look the other way.
This is really just about the Jewish people. It's about everyone, because if we had stood up to the hatred being directed against the Jewish people, we may have been able to stop a war that also killed Gentiles, you know, and gypsies and everyone else.
The Nazis, when they first came in, it was first they started shutting down the schools.
Every day in all German classrooms,
And then they started shutting down the churches, and it was sort of slowly chipping away at society.
Our Führer is the intermediary between his people and the throne of God. Everything the Führer utters is religion in the highest sense.
The Jews didn't really, sadly enough, didn't really take seriously what was going on in Nazi Germany. When Hitler wrote Mein Kampf, you know, which was just diabolical anti-Semitic rantings, basically. And they say, oh, well, it's just nothing really, it's just words, it's just threats.
If you read the writings, if you listen to some of the speeches he gave in Nuremberg at the outside auditorium, he knew exactly what he was doing. He knew exactly what he was doing and was very determined to rid the world of the people of the Torah, the people of the book.
Many of the Jews in Germany were actually Polish Jews originally. And they moved from Poland to Germany because they were told, and it was the case before Hitler came into power, Germany is much more tolerant and less anti-Semitic than Poland. Yeah.
And if we think about it, it's so striking. Where did the Holocaust launch itself? Not in Poland, which was a multi-generational, multi-century haven of anti-Semitism. It took place in Germany. That's where it started, where Jews were totally integrated. They were citizens with full rights. Jews were an essential part of the Kaiser's army in World War I. If there was one place that this horror could be launched from, nobody would have ever guessed Germany, the home of enlightenment.
Their leaders told them that they were Superman, the master race, destined to rule all other peoples on earth.
The more secular you become, the less respect you have for God-given rights. And whether that be the inherent dignity of the individual and all the individualism, as Germany became more secular, they moved more towards saying, oh, those aren't people. The Jews, they aren't people, that they're animals. And you lose your God-given view of human beings. And when you do that, you won't protect their rights. And that's what happened in Germany.
Stop thinking and follow me, cried Hitler. I will make you masters of the world.
You see, when people stand by and allow abuse to happen, allow discrimination to happen, then it's as if people feel like that they've been given permission.
The Holocaust was caused by indifference.
In some ways, indifference is worse than hate.
You know, the opposite of love isn't hatred, it's indifference. You just don't care.
Indifference in any area has the terribly dangerous potential of contagion, of spreading, becoming infectious, and us becoming indifferent in many areas.
A little bit of racism, a little bit of prejudice plants bad seed in people, little attitudes. You know, start off with a small little attitude.
Little by little, you slide into this godless zone of zombie-like indifference to life in all its power and in all its passion.
It's like the proverbial frog boiling in water. You know, you just turn the heat up a little bit at a time, and before long, you're dead.
The lesson we should learn is that indifference against any person is just wrong, and we're allowing it by being silent when it happens. The Holocaust isn't just about remembering something terrible that happened. It's a picture of what will happen if we remain silent.
The difficulty you have in every single nation is you become so accustomed to what you have, you just assume it'll always be there. I mean, we've had our Constitution for 220 years. We're in great shape. No, every single generation has to renew the covenant, renew the principles, and make them personal. As we look at Germany, Germany had a really, really, really long history. And I'm sure sitting where they sit, no way will we ever do this. But it happens a little bit at a time. The Bible teaches us that a little leaven leavens the whole loaf. That's why you have to learn to be intolerant of certain things.
When you see those warning signs, as a Christian, we speak out. And we stand on something much greater than ourselves, and not be afraid to speak out and confront evil. Because indifference often, breeds more indifference and breeds evil.
Intolerance is a really good deal. You have to be intolerant of wickedness. You have to be intolerant of bigotry and racism. You can't tolerate it.
I think the lesson is that we shouldn't tolerate even small amounts of racism and prejudice, because it can be watered and it can germinate into something very ugly.
Look, I think it's vitally important that whilst we still find ourselves awaking in the night to the nightmarish images that haunt our memories, images of the concentration camps, images of man's incalculable cruelty to man, as we listen to the rabid shrieks of frenzied fanatics of Islam promising obliteration of Jews and destruction to America. With all of that, it is so easy to find ourselves overwhelmed by a feeling of gloom and a feeling of hopelessness, and a feeling of what chance is there for the future. That's very easy. But it's important that we resist with all the energy at our disposal. We resist the tendency to fall into gloom and dismay and melancholy about the future.
It's an important reminder that you must stand up and you must stand on values, and even at tremendous cost, because that's who we are as a country and that's who we are as people.
So that's the lesson we have. Just because we've had a great Judeo-Christian relationship between Christians and Jews in America doesn't mean that survives, doesn't mean it lasts, and it doesn't mean that we can't go the same path that Germany and Europe have gone or that the Middle East has gone. We have to be vigilant. We have to be diligent to watch for the danger and to stomp it out whenever it occurs. And we've got to do that every single generation we're alive until Christ returns if we're going to do the right thing with Israel.
And the only way to make sure it will never happen again is to remain faithful to God. Let's remember it, because it is one more in a long line of calamities that have afflicted the Jewish people as part, not in violation of, but as part of their special relationship with God.
If you don't have those kind of values, if you don't have a firmness and a base in faith and a base in human dignity, then why be on this earth?
In conclusion, for this important and holy evening, allow me to let you know this. If it wasn't for the Shoah and for the sacrifice of 6 million Jews who were led like lambs to the slaughter, the state of Israel would not have been in existence today. So all of those who watch us, Holocaust survivors, descendant of Holocaust survivors, I want to say thank you. Thank you for enduring. Thank you for sacrificing. Thank you for not giving up. It is your sacrifice that paved the way for the Jewish state. It is your sacrifice that paved the way for the coming of the Geulah and the coming of the Messiah. Can't wait for the day that we will reunite with our families one more time. This time without pain, without suffering, without anxiety or depression, in joy, in love, as one people, one heart, the God of Israel. As an Israeli born and raised, I can tell you that if it wasn't for your sacrifice, we wouldn't be here. So thank you. We honor you, we love you, and may the mighty name of Israel continue to go before the Jewish people as we say this evening, Od Avinu Chai, Am Israel Chai. On my behalf, on our entire ministry, Ahavat Ami Ministries and Yeshivat Shul, we stand with you, and your voice will become our voice. Your story will never die because we will continue to tell your story. For those who watch for the nations, please don't just stand there. Raise your voice like a beacon of light, like a shofar in those days, and say never again. Rabbi Itzhak Shapira, and I hope to see you tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. as we hear those voices one more time saying, and this time in the nations, never again. God bless you. God bless the God of Israel, and God bless the Jewish people. Shalom.